Welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason.
Yes, it's the Skeptic Zone podcast, episode number 831 for the 8th of September, 2024. Richard Saunders coming to you from the Skeptic Zone studios, complete with two Skeptic Zone cats outside the door waiting for their breakfast here in Sydney, Australia. Looking out the window, overcast in Sydney today. Coming up on this week's show, the Book of Tim. Well, it's the Book of Tim and Richard Saunders. I went round to the Skeptics headquarters the other day. Actually, I took the new metro train. Those people living in Sydney will know what I mean. There's a brand new train line, super duper fast, mostly underground. And I took it up to see Tim Mendham from my part of town to his part of town. And we discuss the incident in 1986 or thereabouts where an Australian-based mining company paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to a certain spoon bender in order for him to use his magic powers to find gold and minerals. Easy money if you can get it. Find out more about Uri Geller and the mining adventure way back from 1986 with the Book of Tim, as Tim reads our report from the Skeptic magazine, and then Tim and I discuss that and some other skeptical issues. Following that, it's Maynard's spooky action. Not so spooky, really. A lot of fun this week. Maynard and I headed to Skeptics in the pub a few days ago, where we had a special screening of Brian Dunning's movie, the UFO movie They Don't Want You to See. It was a packed house and an appreciative audience. It went down very well. It was very interesting. And Maynard, with his trusty microphone, is asking pubgoers what they think of the whole UFO phenomena after all these years and what they thought about the movie itself. Some good times and some familiar voices in there. Then to round off the show in the Trove segment, we continue the UFO theme and look for more reports over the decades about the influx of UFOs. Well, are they here yet? After all this time, we have to wonder. Reports going back as far as 1953, all the way to the 1990s in the Trove segment. A big congratulations to our colleagues and dear friends at the Skeptic's Guide to the Universe podcast who are celebrating their 1,000th episode. Wow, it's a staggering goal. That's quite an achievement. And I've been thrilled over the years to be a guest rogue on the Skeptic's Guide every now and then. In fact, I've done a few live appearances with the SGU gang and also written some of the science or fiction. And I hope to see them again soon-ish next month. I think I'm going to be meeting up with my friends from the Skeptic's Guide when I go to SciCon, the conference in Las Vegas. I'll be giving a talk about spoon bending, water divining, and body balance tricks with Kenny Biddle, and maybe something more than that. I don't know. We'll find out later next month in Las Vegas. But of course, if you're in Sydney, Australia, or if you're in Australia or the Southern Hemisphere or anywhere, and you can get to Sydney, Australia, don't forget we have the Skeptics Convention coming up in late November. Skepticon.org.au. Lots more information about that coming up in the next few weeks. And you can get your tickets right now and see live in person on the main stage the one and only Ben Radford, the famed paranormal investigator from Albuquerque, New Mexico. But that's enough for me at the moment. Ooh, not quite. Also, somewhere on today's episode, you might hear those loons from Canada. We'll see. But now it's time for me to run downstairs and have that lovely hot buttery toast in the morning. While I do that, I hope you enjoy the Skeptic Zone. Reading from the Book of Tim with Tim Mendham.
Okay, this is the Book of Tim on an informal basis, really, as much as anything else, but it is actually from the Skeptic magazine, Volume 6, Number 2, June 1986, which goes back a long way into our heritage. What's that? 32, 38? How many years ago is that? 1986? I can't add up.
Listeners can get their calculators out.
38 years, I think it is. Anyway, so this is a story that came out then, which the Skeptics actually broke the story. So it was a bit of a coup. It is headlined ZANEX, ZANEX, pays Geller over $350,000.
Isn't that a Scottish cow? A bit of a coup? I'm sorry. I know, you can't work under these conditions.
No, I can't. No. Okay, so the story goes on. The Australian-based mining company ZANEX paid magician and mentalist Uri Geller US250,000, which was about 350,000 Australian dollars at the time, for his advice on where to look for gold in the Solomon Islands and near Maldon in Victoria. The Solomon Islands are obviously off the northeast coast of Australia. It's a country in its own right. He was also granted an option to take up 1.25 million shares of ZANEX by a certain time in 1987. So this is a while after our story came out. Anyway, ZANEX brought Uri Geller and his assistant, Shippy Strang, long-time assistant, I don't know, he's not still around, is he, no. Shippy?
Oh, look, I don't know if he's still around, but they certainly fell out, or it wasn't an ongoing thing. Yeah.
Anyway, they brought both of them to Australia in October 1985, and Uri was taken to the old gold mining town of Maldon in central Victoria by the director of ZANEX, Peter Sterling. Geller there had a long discussion with ZANEX geologist Alan Svancio. It is believed Geller did not reveal anything about the Maldon area not already known by geologists. Now, you have to remember, this is pre-internet, so if you're doing a search on Maldon, you've got to do it in the old-fashioned way. If you want to get your information for a hot reading style thing, it's a lot more work in those days than it is now.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, so Geller didn't give him anything new. He then visited the Solomon Islands for the opening of ZANEX's Mavu gold mine in November of 1985. ZANEX had brought over a twin-engine plane to the Solomon Islands at considerable expense to fly Geller over the islands themselves, and Geller indicated 3 areas which he believed had potential. Now, it's a bit unclear exactly how he spotted the areas. Did he fly over and say, down there? Other reports said he used a map and pinpointed on a map.
And I don't think I have this in my archive, but I'm sure I've seen video of him sitting in a plane, flying over areas and possibly pointing down, saying, dig there or something.
Yeah, I think a picture we have here in a story, which we'll discuss later on, that appeared probably about 6 months later almost in the Sydney Morning Herald, has a photo of Sterling and Geller, and they're obviously poring over some particular documents, which might be maps. Sterling looks like a very young fellow, actually, cool with sunglasses and in a T-shirt and whatever. So interesting to know about him. Anyway, Uri obviously has no qualifications as a geologist, but and this is what the Skeptic magazine says, is a talented magician with a reputation for being able to convince people he has psychic powers. That's very subtle. Skeptic magazine editor in those days. And it goes on to actually give some background on Geller, which I think most of our people will know about, the psychological and psychic testing, parapsychological testing, which we're pretty aware of. But we have to go further down, and apparently Geller was performing in San Diego at a place called the Young President's Club. I presume he was performing as a psychic, and he probably was doing his spoon bending and all those highly technical sort of skills. Yeah. And Sterling saw him there, and it turns out that Sterling said, "Oh, you can help me. You're a clever fellow, right? You can do all these psychic things. You might be help us to find minerals or gold, whatever it was they were looking for. There was gold." So he took him to the Solomon Islands, and looking down, it turns out that Geller also claimed, and several local psychics were just repeating the story according to Geller's claim, that he helped out another company called Rio Tinto, which is a very big mining company.
Very big mining company,
now joined on with BHP, I think, GHP, Rio Tinto or something like that.
Okay.
I think it makes it an enormous mining company, and that he also helped them find minerals in different places. But Rio Tinto told the Skeptics in writing that Geller has not been employed by them in any capacity. Now, whether that's PR, marketing cover-up, or whether it's actually true, it's interesting that it might be a claim that Geller makes. And he's a bit known for making claims that are sort of unsubstantiated, like moving the earth so Scotland wouldn't score a goal in a particular soccer game.
One of my favourites is when the Olympic torch got stuck in the year 2000 here in Sydney. It was thanks to Geller that it got moving again because he was concentrating on it.
Good for him. Good for Geller. But anyway, the financial newspapers at the time when this came out was that several large shareholders were seeking to have two of the current ZANEX directors replaced, which might have been Peter Sterling as well. I don't think they were too impressed with the idea of spending 350,000 Australian dollars plus transport, travel and whatever else was involved to get a psychic to try and find gold. And the story was, as much as we can figure out, certainly in this 38 years later, whatever, let's call it 40 years to be nice, that he ever found gold. Now, trying to track down Peter Sterling is an interesting situation. One, because trying to find a reference to ZANEX is hard these days. Keeps cropping up with a pharmaceutical or something called for I think it's for some sort of stomach problem or something, vomiting or something.
Could be.
Highly appropriate.
But it's spelt with a...
that's Xanax, and this is Z or Z-A-N-E-X. So the only thing I could find was a forum called the Australian Stock Market Forum. People can discuss things, obviously, and this was an item that cropped up in January 2009, and someone was asking, anyone here remember this fellow, Peter J. Sterling? He was director of several Aussie companies back in the late 80s. He has popped up again in the USA with a pink sheet stock recently. Someone will have to explain to me what a pink sheet stock is.
No idea.
Okay. It's pink, I presume.
It's pink.
Yeah. He says, this fellow says, I'm trying to find background info on him, but it appears the Aussie securities regulators don't have docs online going back far enough. Well, Skeptics does, but obviously the Australian Stock Exchange doesn't. This fellow lists a number of companies that he was involved with. In one of them is ZANEX, and this fellow says, nicely, the only thing that is apparent about him is his hiring of the psychic, Uri Geller, much to the displeasure of many ZANEX shareholders, which means our story is the only reference to ZANEX, Uri Geller, and the outraged shareholders. So not a lot of people covered it, except 6 months after our story came out, a science reporter named Bob Beale wrote a story on this case, and Bob was one of the best science reporters of the time, used to regularly correspond with us about various issues and things, so as were the dates. And he writes, about a year ago, the famous Israeli spoonbender turned psychic prospector, Uri Geller, was flying in a light aircraft over the Solomon Islands. Beside him, and, quote, keeping an open mind, was Mr. Peter Sterling, chairman of the Australian gold mining company ZANEX. Now, they call him chairman, we call him director, so not quite sure which. The two men pored over maps of the islands, directing the pilot to areas Geller had nominated as potentially valuable mineral deposits. For his troubles, according to the Australian Skeptics, Geller was being paid $250,000 US, plus an option to take up the ZANEX shares, as I mentioned. Earlier in Australia, Geller had picked search areas by passing his hands over the maps to feel those magnetic sensations on my palms or fingertips. I just find this confusing. Do you? About looking at a map, you're not at the place.
Well, this is like map dowsing, isn't it?
It is very much like map dowsing, but how does a map pick up the energy from a place that might be thousands of miles away, thousands of kilometres away?
You're asking these questions, you're in the wrong business.
I know. I'd like to know, honestly. Is it that a printer, whoever prints the maps, has these energies implanted in the map?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
For any use whatsoever.
You've sussed it.
I think it's a problem with this one. Anyway, he's feeling the magnetic sensations. The flight was the fine-tuning phase of hand dowsing, as Geller describes the process. As Mr. Sterling recalls, Geller extended one hand, palm down, inside the aircraft. I could do that.
So he's flying over.
He's flying over. And
he's got one hand down.
One hand down. Not outside the plane.
Not outside the plane.
Didn't open the window, stick it out.
Right.
And one hand palm down inside the aircraft. This is how he can pick up all the magnetic influences. Not influenced by the plane, obviously.
No.
These energies must go straight through the plane despite all the electronics and metal and everything that the plane is. Anyway, Sterling says that Geller, told me that he felt some sort of pressure in his hand over areas where he believed there were minerals in the ground. And this guy must be the most gullible person I've ever heard to even pay any credence to a comment like that.
Well,
pressure in his hand?
Well, I mean,
you're more accommodating than I am.
That's right.
I'm the one who goes to executing these people, but yeah.
Well, but you must remember that an awful lot of people were taken in by Geller and Gellerism and all that sort of stuff. And I've seen people completely believe in things where, you face palm, you think you can't possibly, yet they do. So I wouldn't write anything out like this, Yeah,
and they might be, it's not your mug punter it could be people in highly qualified scientific...
It doesn't matter.
Yes.
It doesn't matter. As Geller showed us all, even qualified scientists in various fields were still subject to be fooled.
Yeah, there's an interesting story, actually, as an aside, that the first chairman of SciCop, which is now CSI in America, the publishers of Skeptical Inquirer, made claims that actually he thought ESP might be true. He said all the things he studied, all the claims of paranormalities, etc., were untrue, except for possibly ESP. And he based it on the fact that his wife and he would often have the same idea at the same time.
Proof positive.
Proof positive, yeah. Proof positive has been married a long time.
That's right.
And they understand each other. But anyway.
And of course, there's a good old cherry picking and confirmation bias.
There is.
Probably.
Yes. But you're just selecting that, aren't you?
I am.
Anyway, so there's Geller in the plane with his hand down. He says he's picking up pressure and minerals in the ground. Geller nominated several sites, about 10 square kilometres each, which he said indicated potential for gold and diamonds. Now, until now, this is until the November story by Bob Beale, ZANEX has refused to formally confirm or deny that such a thing happened, linking the Skeptics' claims to a mudslinging takeover battle for the company, which we don't have any details of, I don't know about it. But Geller's new book, The Geller Effect, includes photographs of himself with Mr. Sterling, thanks Geller, during the flight, and of Geller at the opening of the existing ZANEX gold mine, which took place during their Solomon's trip. And Geller says, Peter Sterling told me that I had managed to shorten the odds from about 300 to 1 to more like 3 to 1, which was reason enough to justify hiring me. Geller continues, he was also kind enough to give me an open testimonial letter, being the first of my employers to do so.
Oh,
isn't that nice? To whom it may concern.
Yeah, that's right.
We found Uri a very nice fellow.
Very nice fellow.
Very cooperative.
Yes,
yes. Used to clean up after himself.
And he brought his own spoons.
Yeah. Anyway, the testimonial noted that ZANEX was about to begin exploring in the areas indicated by Geller, notably Malaita Island, which I don't know where that is, where, quote, we have already confirmed the presence of kimberlite, which could be diamondiferous in this area.
Kimberlite?
Kimberlite.
Is that like kryptonite?
Yes. I wouldn't go near that if I were you. Anyway, kimberlite, yes. Geller writes that ZANEX's use of my services was just one of several departures from traditional methods of mining companies, and I'm glad to say they paid off. Well, that's the question, and Bob Beale asked, so did ZANEX hire Geller and did his services pay off? Surprisingly, despite the very specific claims made by Geller, Mr. Sterling still refuses to say whether his company actually hired Geller. He readily admits to being on the Solomon's flight, to have written the testimonial, to believing that Geller does have the ability to bend metal using psychic ability, and to following up Geller's exploration advice. He says, so far we're very happy that we've gone into these areas because we've found minerals that may turn out to be economic.
That's him now.
Hold your hand palm down.
That's him now flying over the house, I think.
You can feel the energy, I can tell.
I can tell.
Uri, you've been here.
No gold. Oh, well.
No. Anyway, so Geller was saying, Sterling was saying that we've been into these areas and may turn out to be economic, but we haven't yet got to the point where we can determine that. I can assure you that if we find a major ore body, we'll be the first to jump up and down about it. Call me in 12 months' time. Well, it's interesting because this story was 12 months after when he flew Geller over the Solomon Islands. So if he was so keen that taking the odds down to 3-1, he would have gone in there. Now maybe he's not going to report that they found it because of stock exchange issues, but I can't find any reference for ZANEX now at all.
When we were thinking about doing this story, I was searching other archives, and there's just scarcely anything. This is just about the only thing I could come up with was from the Sydney Morning Herald.
Yeah, I know. Which is part of the problem sometimes when you break a story of the Skeptic, and people do notice it, and we sort of send it out. The media are on our free list to receive the magazine or whatever, and then it seems like it's small news to them. We'd like the story we had when we announced the Ben Spoon Award for Ross Coulthard, who's a serious Walkley award-winning journalist in Australia multiple times, and that when you're pointing out that his journalism might be a bit
lacking,
suspect, loose, think of a nice word. Anyway, all those, that it would be noticed by journalists, and they would sort of say, this is interesting, but of course journalists don't like talking about journalists.
Well, that too, and I just wonder... is there just too much UFO news now? I mean, it's every other week we're getting the latest revelation from the US, the whistleblower, the insider. If it keeps going, it's the boy who cried wolf. I mean, there's only so much of this you can listen to, and you start to get bored with it because nothing ever happens. And as I like to say, at least with the boy who called wolf, the wolf appeared at last one day
and got him.
with the people who cry UFO, they just keep crying and crying and crying.
Like Ross Coulthard made a comment that when his book came out, which was a year and a quarter ago, about 15 months ago now, perhaps a bit less.
Like that, yeah.
Anyway, and he said that on an interview, a podcast type interview, sorry, I can't say serious media because obviously some podcasts are serious media.
Well, some of them.
Yeah, I know. But on this particular one, which is very casual chat, he made the point that all this information that David Grush was revealing to the American Congress about secret bases buried under the ground and things built over them, and we've actually got sources and technology and bodies and that sort of stuff, would be come out into the open in 12 to 18 months.
Yeah. Any day now.
Any day now.
Any day now.
I know. Yeah, you've written several articles with that theme,
actually. Have I? Well, I know the one that I'm proud of, and the one I remember, and the one I keep quoting to other people, it's called Any Day Now.
It is called Any Day Now.
Any Day Now.
It's a great title.
It's because any day now.
And as someone pointed out, I did a review of a book that came out about 40 years ago, and he made the point then, I think it was Rob Schaefer actually wrote a book about UFOs, and he used exactly the same thing. He said, any day now. They keep quoting it, and they have been since, what's his name, Kenneth Arnold, saw the flying saucers in Mount Rainier, that sort of thing. But any day now, the truth is going to come out there.
It's a great mantra because people die. What I mean by that is generations come and go, and a new generation will hear this. Oh, any day now, this is going to happen. And if they don't look back through the history, they won't discover that, oh, hang on, 10 years ago they were saying that, and 20 years ago, and 30 years ago, and now it's 70 years ago they're saying that.
Yeah, and it's like when they report these things, it's like, as you found out with the Great Australian Psychic Prediction Project, that the media don't go back and check what was said 12 months ago, especially in these sort of areas. No. It's just entertainment.
It's entertainment.
And therefore anyone can say anything and get away with it because it sounds impressive at the time.
Yeah.
But we're still waiting for this. I mean, this would be a major revelation if the UFOs, as opposed to Geller, right, was revealed.
And the coincidence here, or the convergence, is just recently Ross Coulthard interviewed Uri Geller. And Geller tells the story of how the German scientist, the rocket scientist, who am I thinking of?
Werner von Braun?
Took Geller down to see aliens in some secret.
Did he really?
Yes.
And we can trust Geller.
Any day now, this will come out, So there you go.
Right, okay.
But it says a lot for, it says a lot for both men, I guess, but when we think about Ross Coulthard and what he's been doing lately, to interview Uri Geller with a straight face...
Yeah. Ross Coulthard is a master of the yes but no but sort of.
I've been told. That's his.
Whether you
thing.
believe it or not, he'll say.
If what I've been told is true,
yes.
And he says that repeatedly, so it's almost like, oh, I'm not saying this, but if what I've been told is true.
I wouldn't ever go to a dentist who made that claim, actually. It may or may not work.
Especially a psychic dentist.
Who was interesting, who was actually spoke about in that same issue of the magazine, the Skeptic magazine. Everything comes around in circles.
It's
Richard.
what goes around.
Everything's connected.
Now, Tim, before we wrap it up, the reading from the magazine this week was from which volume again?
It was from the Skeptic magazine.
Yep.
Volume 6, number 2.
Yep.
June 1986. And you can download that particular copy of the magazine in all its sort of artistic glory. It was done in the early days of our production, so it's a bit more around.
But you're reading from an original copy.
I'm reading from an original copy here,
Very
actually,
nice.
yes, which is in black and white. So, you can download that copy along with virtually every other copy of the Skeptic magazine from our website, skeptics.com.au.
That's the one.
And you can spend probably about the next 3 or 4 months
Easily.
reading through all the stuff that's on there. It might be a bit much at times, but yeah. And you can search as well and look for particular stories. If you want to search for Geller or Coulthard or even a psychic dentist.
Here's Maynard's spooky action at a distance.
We're here at Skeptics in the pub. Have you been here many times before?
Yes, I have, but I haven't been for a few years. We sort of stopped coming with COVID, and then
Here you are.
this is our first time back.
Oh, you haven't been for a while either, hey?
Correct.
You've been sceptical at home.
We have. We forever critical thinking.
Good. Well, you're here tonight because of Brian's movie. You've heard him talk about it on Skeptoid all the time. And by the way, I'd just like to show you, I'm wearing my Skeptoid socks. Yes, I've got a bit of merch there from Brian. But we've been asking people, are you well and truly over UFOs, or you think it's still an interesting enigma?
I just think it's amazing that it's sort of got a whole new life again. I thought we'd sort of worked it all out, many years ago, and it's sort of come back with a vengeance. And I just wonder whether it's one of those things that'll just sort of die out and then come back and die out and come back.
Kind of like Madonna, they're having a rebranding there. UAPs now. What do you think?
I'm science-based. Show me the science. So we'll keep testing the theories.
Yeah, some people put a spiritual overlay on it for no reason at all. You're feeling very spiritual tonight? I mean, it's Brian Dunning, the great guru man himself.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
Now, you know that Brian almost bloody froze to death doing this movie.
No, I didn't know that.
Oh, well, during he was trying to do it all night, his presentation, and he was hopping inside his Tesla. He was in the middle of some Death Valley or something like that, and he got hypothermia. He had to throw away a lot of takes because he was going, he sounded like drunk. But that's Brian, isn't it, really?
I've listened to a lot of Brian Dunning, so
Oh, right.
I do follow him.
Yeah.
So, yes.
I've gone drinking with Brian, so I see him from a different angle, really. Yeah.
I'm sure you do.
But he's very serious there. And, whenever you start talking to him, he just says, this is Brian Dunning from Skeptoid.com. And that takes up a lot of time in an evening. He does it all the time. Have you got your merchandise like the socks I'm wearing or not?
No, I don't. I've got some of the little thumb drives and things like that
cool.
with the shows on it. But
Look, it's a great show to get behind. It's very concise. Yes. It covers it very quickly. There's a transcript, so if you miss something, you can read it or send it to someone. Thank you both for talking to me. Thank you. Thank you very much. Look, the question here today at Skeptics at the pub, the place where all the skeptics come rushing, then they go hushing, and then they go flushing in quite that order. And we've got, who we got here?
This is Sue, fellow skeptic. Hello, Maynard.
Hello, pretty good. You feeling sceptical tonight?
I'm feeling exceedingly sceptical because I'm always in that mood when I'm amongst fellow skeptics.
I'll tell you what, I'm incredibly sceptical of Brian Dunning's haircut.
Oh, Brian's not here to defend himself, so I'll just keep quiet on that one.
Oh, right, no. It's an enigma wrapped in a sausage. But I'll tell you what, are you over UFOs or not is what I'm telling you and asking you.
Good question, Maynard. I'm actually not over UFOs because I'm fairly new to ufology and debunking.
You're what they call a seeker. You're still a seeker.
I'm still a seeker, definitely. I come into skepticism from the other sciences, so I'm still interested in learning all of the UFO legends and how to debunk them.
Right, and of course this has been all over a few of the places around the web there. You've seen a bit of this documentary before. What are you looking forward to?
I'm looking forward to seeing some good arguments so that when silliness comes up online, I know the answers for debunking it.
But you know they're not going to listen to you. You know there's few things are as a waste of time as an argument on Facebook.
That's true, but I'm not hoping to convert the true believers. It's more for people reading on to see.
You're just in it for the cranky. You're just in there for turning the crank, aren't you? That's it.
I have to admit I do like an argument.
And Laura, how are you today?
I'm good, Maynard.
Hey, I just sat down hard and broke the chair at the Occidental. Wow, that's a big thing.
That did not sound good, yeah.
Are you over UFOs the way this chair's over my bum?
I think occasionally, yes. But as a teacher, like a question that I get asked almost every year by certain groups of my students is, do I believe in UFOs? Do I think there are aliens, etc.? So I think it's because there's fresh, we've got young people growing up, and for them it's completely new. It's a new concept, and it's one that they find quite interesting. And I like to use that to get them interested in skepticism and science.
Right. So what science would you go into directly with them when asked that? Would it be some sort of physics or an engineering thing?
I think it depends how it depends where they take it. Like my initial response is usually to do with the fact that if they're asking me whether I think that alien life exists somewhere in the universe, then my answer is probably yes. But if they're asking whether I think there is intelligent life forms that are like us, or whether I think they're visiting Earth, then my answer is no, and then we go into the details on that. So it depends where they then take the conversation.
What a special night we have for you tonight, ladies and gentlemen. We have a feature documentary, one that I keenly watched being made over the last couple of years. It's been regarded as one of the best skeptical investigations into the whole question of UFOs, but it's not a cynical investigation, as you'll discover. It's not UFOs don't exist, go away and we're better than you. It's let's look. Let's take a serious look at what is happening, and let's get the best evidence we can. I think you'll find it entertaining.
Or it might be tomorrow, but that signal full of data could come anytime. I'm Brian Dunning. Thank you for watching.
We've just watched the UFO movie. They don't want you to see. All these people saw it. Did you appreciate the movie, folks? Yeah. A big thank you to Brian Dunning.
So after seeing Brian Dunning's film, has it changed anything you've thought, or what did you think was the thing you take away from Brian's movie?
Very well made film of very logical explanations for something which isn't ordinarily discussed. Everybody who wants to believe in UFOs will probably never see that film.
Yeah, that's a good point. Look, you've seen a lot of skeptical-based films and documentaries in your time. What do you think of Brian's one?
Oh, it's great. I think it's very well produced, and he doesn't hector people. He doesn't sort of yell and scream at them.
The only thing I thought was, would the film have been helped if he'd actually spoken to that Harvard professor, if he'd talked to the missileer who was there? Do you think that would have dragged it out a bit much?
I mean, it would have dragged it out. I mean, sort of basically, if you speak to them and as he talks about their views, that they don't change their view. Right. And if they have a vested interest, which is their belief in UFOs, rather than trying to be open-minded, it would have been difficult. You're often on a hiding to nothing to actually speak to these sort of people. But yes, it might have been good to have that extra element in there.
Because you can come across as you're looking a bit mean by doing that too, can't you?
Well, you look a bit like you're selecting your audience or selecting your cherry-picking your argument. But the people he has, I don't think are particularly obnoxious sort of skeptics. So and people like Mick West are good at explaining things rather than just saying you're stupid. No one goes that far. They all sort of try and give an explanation. But I mean, yeah, perhaps so. But then I often found in my experience, as a UFO, if you open it up to everybody, you're just going to get one-way conversations anyway. So
Yeah, true. Good point.
Hello, Maynard.
Gauzian, what do you think of the film? You thought it was well put together? You were happy with the way it went? Was there something should have been in it that wasn't?
I think it was excellently done. Gave a very dispassionate and unbiased account of it all. And nevertheless, it managed to establish quite clearly that whatever visitors we've had on Earth, they don't appear to be aliens, unfortunately.
Now, unlike Brian's film, you've actually been out and spoken to a few people who believe they have had experiences of these kind. Do you think it would have helped if Brian had had those sort of people in the film and he'd interviewed them?
Okay, well, Ross Coulthard is the one that comes to my mind. I've crossed swords with him a few times. In fact, he had his book launch in the State Library just down the road in Sydney, and I went along to protest outside. And surprise, surprise, I got invited inside to meet him and put my point of view.
And what happened? Was he fairly intransient?
Well, I got a standing ovation when I walked into the room because he'd been priming them up against me, it seems.
I see. Okay.
And they all thought I was very brave to come and face up to him. But for me, it was just all in a day's work. So.
Look, I thought the film was pretty good. I thought, yes, that Brian's haircut still is an unsolved mystery. But of course,
I think he cuts it himself. Actually, I don't know.
well, he's paying no more than $5, that's for sure. I got to say, would it have helped the movie? And I've asked this to a few people. Would it have helped the movie if you had the Harvard guy who believed in UFOs and went to area? Would it have helped if you had the missileer and thought that the red light was what caused the power outage? If you'd interviewed them, would that have helped the film at all? Because the way it was all one-sided as far as of the argument. That's all.
I don't know, because Brian put the case so clearly, it would be hard to know how to counter that. And also, he probably did approach a lot of people who wouldn't be in it anyway. I expect. I don't know all the ins and outs of it, but it's a great documentary as it is. I'm happy with it the way it is, I think.
Right. Look, I think it's right up there with Casablanca. That's a great documentary as well about the Vichy French. Fantastic. Look, Brian, you mightn't have UFOs, but we'll always have Paris.
Once again to go back to the archive at Trove. Lots of goodies there at trove.nla.gov.au. Australia's published history, well, a lot of it anyway. Newspapers and magazines and so on. And it is a never-ending source of interest for investigators of skeptical matters and, I guess, historical matters and many things. And, of course, the ever-popular, evergreen topic are those UFOs, UAPs, flying saucers, they used to call them, that keep invading Earth. I mean, really, haven't they got anything better to do? And I noticed there's a new book out by Pentagon insider, whistleblower Lou Alessandro, called Imminent. Imminent, yes. In other words, any day now. Any Day Now, which is the name of a report I wrote some years back in the pages of the Skeptic magazine, basically saying that from religious cults to UFO believers to all sorts of people, the chant of Any Day Now has been echoed through the millennia. And in fact, I think I read this out on the Skeptic Zone some while back. I might see if I can add a link to that in this week's show notes. Any day now. But despite the seeming lack of our alien overlords, looking out the window, there's some birds out there. Let's look once more back through the archive of published magazines and newspapers in Australia to discover what we can about these aliens who thus far are a little bit shy, maybe, about making themselves known. let's start with the Australian Jewish News. And this is from Melbourne, Victoria. Hello to everybody in Melbourne. Published on the 23rd of August, 1996. So, something in the order of 28 years ago. UFO mania. Most Israelis believe in UFOs. At least that's according to Dr. Ariel Cohen, who heads up the Hebrew University's Department of Atmospheric Studies. He puts the figure as high as 60%. There has also been a rash of UFO sightings in recent weeks, and Dr. Cohen, who does not believe in alien beings from outer space, nevertheless believes the government should investigate the phenomenon and allay anxieties. The London Jewish Chronicle reports that amongst the explanations for the UFO mania are that it's akin to, quote, Jerusalem syndrome, end quote, whereby visitors to the city have visions, or more plausibly, that Israelis live in a constant state of tension, which makes them hypersensitive to their environment. Mind you, if the UFOnics are out there, do you think they follow Nusach Safad or Nusach Ashkenaz? And I'm not sure who those people are. And this was a report by Ibn Ezra. Now let's go to the year 1987 in the pages of the Canberra Times on the 1st of June. Allegations of alien cover-up. London, Sunday, Australian Associated Press. The bodies of 4 aliens from a UFO which crashed in the United States 40 years ago were recovered and examined by a special government team, according to top-secret documents obtained by a British researcher. A report in the National Sunday newspaper in Britain said a committee codenamed Majestic 12 was involved in the recovery operation and the subsequent cover-up. The Observer newspaper said it had seen documents which claim the then head of the CIA, Admiral Roscoe Heelancotter, I hope that's pronounced, reported that, quote, although these creatures are human-like in appearance, the biological and evolutionary processes responsible for their development have apparently been quite different from those observed or postulated in Homo sapiens, end quote. The document purports to be a briefing paper for President Eisenhower on Operation Majestic 12, or MJ-12. A leading British UFO researcher, Mr. Timothy Good, claims in his book Above Top Secret, The Worldwide UFO Cover-Up, that Majestic 12 was a committee of senior US officials which investigated and then covered up flying saucer crashes. Some UFO experts believe the story could be a hoax involving the planting in the files of Air Force intelligence a separate White House memo which supports the briefing paper. The Observer said inquiries have been unable to authenticate the document, but evidence had been found to support the existence of the mysterious MJ-12 committee. In the briefing paper detailing the discovery of the alien bodies, it was reported that on June 24, 1947, disc-shaped aircraft were sighted in the US. Quote, little was learned until a local rancher reported that one had crashed in New Mexico, end quote, the briefing paper said. It continues, quote, on July 7, 1947, a secret operation was begun to assure recovery of the wreckage for scientific study. During the course of this operation, aerial reconnaissance discovered that 4 small human-like beings had apparently ejected from the craft before it exploded. Extensive searches of the archives of US Presidents Truman and Eisenhower and the National Archives have failed to turn up a copy of the briefing paper. It seems no evidence of the alien bodies remains either. And just briefly, because, over the years, Majestic 12 or MJ-12 or Magic, it says here, 12 reports have been floating about. It's part of UFO folklore. What does Wiki have to say? Majestic 12, purported organization that appears in UFO conspiracy theories. Majestic 12, also known as MJ12 for short, is a purported organization that appears in UFO conspiracy theories. The organization is claimed to be the code name of an alleged secret committee of scientists, military leaders and government officials formed in 1947 by an executive order by US President Harry S. Truman to facilitate recovery and investigation of alien spacecraft. The concept originated in a series of supposedly leaked secret government documents first circulated by ufologists in 1984. Upon examination, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, declared the documents to be completely bogus, and many ufologists consider them to be an elaborate hoax. Majestic 12 remains popular among some UFO conspiracy theorists, and the concept has appeared in popular culture, including television, film, and literature. Not so majestic after all. And now going back a few months in the same year, 1987, again in the Canberra Times, maybe a more circumspect and more interesting report about the whole UFO phenomena. And this is a report by Christopher Hansen in Washington. UFOs and extraterrestrial research, a paradox for scientists seeking signals of life in space. Reports of a huge flying saucer over Alaska not long ago have pointed up a space-age paradox within the scientific community. Many scientists are very skeptical about supposed sightings of unidentified flying objects, UFOs, but many of the same scholars believe the galaxy is teeming with intelligent life and support projects for the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, SETI, S-E-T-I. Scientists with the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, NASA, have embarked on an official mission to expand vastly the scope of the search. The Alaska incident was reported last November by Japan Airlines, JAL, pilot Kenji Torochi, I hope that's pronounced, who said his plane was trailed for an hour by a walnut-shaped craft twice as big as an aircraft carrier, with a broad brim at its center and bright running lights. He said the UFO stayed with him as he descended 1,200 meters and circled, and that his plane's weather radar picked it up. The Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, initially reported that it too had detected a craft on radar, but later said a malfunction might have created a duplicate radar image of the cargo plane itself. The Alaskan incident was widely dismissed by space experts as just another inconclusive episode. Thousands of people, including former US President Jimmy Carter, have reported seeing UFOs. And that particular event is covered in the UFO movie They Don't Want You to See. That has not shaken the skepticism among scientists such as the University of Virginia's physicist James Trefil, who says, quote, "There has never been an unambiguous case," end quote, in all these sightings. Even so, Dr. Trefil told a recent conference at Washington's Smithsonian Institution the conventional wisdom among scientists also held that, quote, "We are not alone," end quote. Given the millions of stars in the Milky Way, the probability that many of them have planets with environments suitable for life, and the billions of years in which civilizations could have evolved, these scientists say it is likely the galaxy has many advanced civilizations. Their estimates on how many range from 1 million to fewer than 100. And again, this is an interesting point brought up in the UFO movie They Don't Want You to See, where Brian Dunning discusses the Christmas tree effect, or to put it another way, it's possible that an advanced civilization appeared on the other side of the galaxy 500 million years ago. Sadly, nowhere near us, and we are never likely to even know of its existence. And you might say that in another 500 million years, another civilization will rise somewhere else, hundreds of thousands of light years from us, and it will never know about us. The operating theory behind SETI is that if advanced civilizations exist, they may be trying to communicate with other worlds by beaming radio signals into space, and radio telescopes on Earth could pick up such signals. US scientists pioneered SETI starting in 1960 with physicist Frank Drake's OSMA project, named for a Wizard of Oz character, and using a radio telescope in West Virginia. Now the Soviet Union, France, West Germany, the Netherlands, Japan and Canada are funding SETI radio telescope projects. No alien signals have yet been detected, scientists say. But NASA, with an annual SETI budget of some $2 million, about $3 million Australian, is developing the technology for a vast expansion in the number of frequencies that could be scanned for messages, a jump from thousands of frequencies to many millions. NASA plans to scan the entire sky and conduct closer probes of 800 stars which are similar to the Sun, beginning in the 1990s. Quote, "In 1 minute, with the new technology, we will accomplish more than has been carried out in the past 25 years with all previous programs," end quote, NASA scientist Peter Backus said. He said that NASA's search would be, quote, "tens of billions," end quote, of times more thorough than today's most advanced SETI probes. Earthlings have sent out relatively few messages to possible aliens, although scientists say advanced civilizations could tell Earth was inhabited from military radar and television rays leaking into space. Scientists beamed an electronic greeting into space using a radio telescope in Puerto Rico in 1974. And if we pause here for a moment, that message, I'm not familiar with that message, but whatever it was, is now reached in the vicinity of 50 light years away from Earth. 50 light years. I wonder how many star systems are within that bubble of distance. NASA's unmanned Pioneer 10 spacecraft carried a plaque with drawings of a nude man and woman. And that's a very famous picture, of course. And a space map showing the Earth's location. And Voyager 1 carried a disc with rock music including a Chuck Berry song, a message of friendship from the then UN Secretary-General Kurt Waldheim, and samples of 60 languages. Some scientists say receipt of an alien message would be the most important event in human history and could result in mankind learning vast amounts from a more advanced culture. But University of Virginia physicist Robert Roode sounded a note of warning in his book, Are We Alone? Quote, "The civilization that blurts out its existence on interstellar beacons at the first opportunity may be like some early hominid descending from the trees and calling, 'Here, kitty,' to a saber-toothed tiger," end quote, Dr. Roode wrote. Some scientists, including Dr. Trefel, are skeptical about the possibility of intelligent alien civilizations. Quote, "Where are they?" end quote, Dr. Trefel asked. Quote, "If a single civilization could colonize the galaxy in millions of years, and if billions of years have elapsed since the first such civilization was supposed to arise, how can we explain the total lack of evidence for extraterrestrials on Earth?" End quote. One theory is that alien civilizations chose to put our solar system off limits as a kind of galactic zoo or nature reserve. But Dr. Trefel discounts this. Quote, "What is the probability that of all the billions of individuals in each of the millions of galactic races, there is not a single poacher?" End quote. Some say it is possible an alien civilization is only now expanding into the galaxy and had not reached Earth. But Dr. Trefel says that would be remarkable, given the history of man was, quote, "a blink of the eye on any galactic timescale," end quote. But he supports SETI research, which could lead scientists to conclude that man is alone in the universe after all. He said such a conclusion would be highly significant. It would mean that, quote, "we are special," end quote. And that story is from Reuters. But let's end with a good old-fashioned UFO story. And this is from 1952. On the 15th of September, in the pages of the Advertiser from Adelaide. Glowing monster seen by US party. And this is from the Australian Associated Press. New York, September 14. 7 persons reported having seen a 10-foot glowing, quote, Frankenstein-like monster, end quote, when they climbed a wooded hill in an isolated area near Sutton, West Virginia, on Friday night to investigate reports that a flying saucer had landed. Mrs. Kathleen May of Flatwood, West Virginia, said she and 6 boys climbed a hill behind the town after her 2 small sons had told her that they had seen a bright object come down. But police last night laughed the reports off as hysteria. They said the so-called monster had grown from 7 foot to 17 foot in 24 hours. Gene Lemon, 17, was leading the group up the hill when he saw what appeared to be a pair of bright eyes in a tree. When he shone his light on it, he saw a 10-foot monster with a, quote, blood-red face and green body that seemed to glow, end quote. Mrs. May said the monster started towards them, moving with a floating, bouncing motion. Quote, there was an overpowering gaseous smell that burnt my nostrils and made me sick, added Mrs. May. Quote, several of the party passed out and vomited for several hours after returning to town, end quote. Goodness. Mr. Lee Stewart, co-publisher of the Braxton County Democrat, said he and several men armed with shotguns returned with Lemon about 30 minutes after and reported that a sickening odour was still present. There was also slight heat waves in the air. Quote, these people were the most scared people I've ever seen, end quote, Mr. Stewart added. Quote, people don't make up that kind of story that quickly, end quote. Well, I wonder what the story was behind this strange glowing monster and subsequent effects on people. Something from 72 years ago. Probably not a space alien. So there we are, from glowing space aliens to the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. You can find it all in the pages at Trove, at trove.nla.gov.au. It's great to just type in anything, really. In Australia, I know people go there to look up family members. And in fact, over the years, I've discovered reports about my grandfather, for example, which have been interesting. Because when you go to Trove, you never know what you might find. Thank you for listening to the Skeptic Zone podcast. Thank you to my wonderful band of reporters, as ever. And thank you to my checker, the wonderful person who reviews my work before I publish the web page. Coming up on next week's show, we have a new report from our new reporter, Kat McLeod, way up there in Canada, in Edmonton. Haven't been to Edmonton for many decades. Undoubtedly, we'll have some more news about the upcoming Skepticon convention. And, well, who knows what else? We'll find out. But for this week, with a final thank you to all the sponsors. When I say sponsors, I mean people like you who contribute with PayPal or Patreon at skepticzone.tv. This is Richard Saunders, signing off.
You've been listening to the Skeptic Zone podcast. Please visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for episodes and show notes with links going back to 2008. You can follow the Skeptic Zone on Facebook, X, TikTok and YouTube by clicking the links at our homepage, together with links to support the show financially via Patreon or PayPal. The Skeptic Zone is an independent production. The views and opinions expressed by our guests are not necessarily those of the Skeptic Zone podcast or any other skeptical organisation.
Hi, Adrian. Welcome back from the land of fairies and trolls. How are you?
Oh, I'm fine. And it was so fun to be in the land of fairies and trolls. Didn't see any, though I did have some issues with an elf stealing my glasses because I never did find them.
Ooh, well, I'm sure he is or she is seeing much better after stealing your specs. While you were gone, I was able to find the September-October issue of the Skeptical Inquirer. And you know that I'm excited because you're on the cover.
It's a bit surreal. And what I think is even more surreal is my name is in big, bold letters right across the front.
It really is.
It's so crazy. Did not expect that. The artwork on the cover is beautiful. It's really fun. And I particularly like that it has a little Scooby-Doo mystery machine that's down in the corner. And so what's the cover about, Kat?
I do believe it is about the Winchester Mystery House.
Yes. Fact or fancy? I delve into a lot of the lore that has been around since she was alive and also what the truth is about the matter versus the lore. It's fun.
It is an awesome article. Of course, I read it online because I couldn't wait for it to come out hard copy in Canada. It took forever. Everyone I know in America was showing off their copies online, and I'm like, I'm so jealous. I'm just going to read it online.
Yeah, and I was supposed to get advanced copies in there. I just got them, so.
It's always slower getting to Canada.
It is, yeah.
But congratulations on that epic milestone.
Thank you so much. It's pretty exciting. And not only that, but I'm going to be heading out to San Jose this weekend, and I'm meeting up with Susan Gerbic and Ross Blotcher, and we're going to go to the Winchester Mystery House all together. So I'm really excited about seeing it again.
I am so envious because I would love to be in your luggage and go along with you.
I'd love you to come along. I think you would enjoy it.
I've always wanted to go, and since I've heard you speak about it, I want to go even more so now.
And if I remember correctly, at the We Can Reason, you came up to me and said, I thought that all the crazy stuff said about Sarah Winchester or Sally Winchester, which is what she was called, that she was a crazy lady. And you were very surprised to learn that she wasn't so crazy. In fact, was a very intelligent, smart woman and kind.
Who was an excellent employer. And I have since read her amazing Wikipedia page, which was also pretty much rewritten by you, I believe. If you're interested, go read the article. Go read the Wikipedia page.
Well, and as always, we're getting distracted because we actually got together to do something very, very important. And that is the dice game.
Yes. But you know, with us, it's never anything straightforward. Now it's official. We can begin.
I have a very special die here. This I got in a Skepticrate from Celestia Ward from the Squaring the Strange podcast.
Cool.
And it is the smallest die. It's a 6-sided die, so D6, that I have ever seen. It's tiny.
It is very tiny.
I could easily lose it or my dog could eat it.
That's like 5 centimeters square, maybe? Or millimeters, I mean?
It's very, very tiny.
You can start the game.
Okay, I'm going to put it in my fancy rolling box here. So we have to predict.
I'm going to predict a 6.
6. I am going to predict a 1. It is a 4.
Oh. All right, so you want me to go next?
Sure. How many sides?
I am using a D20.
A D20. I'm going to go with my usual 20.
And so I will therefore go with my usual, even though we know it's never 19. It was 20. You got it.
I'm more psychic today than I usually am.
You are.
The next one, I'm going to use my D6 again because this is so adorable.
Okay, I'm going to guess a 2.
A 2? I'm going to put it in my dice rolling box. That's an origami box made by Richard Saunders.
Are you going to guess?
Oh, yeah.
You don't know how this works anymore?
I'll do a 5 in honor of Susan.
Okay.
It is a 1. let's do the supplemental now. What size die?
I just picked up a 6, a D6, but a bigger D6.
Much bigger, much easier to read.
Oh, we didn't guess.
Okay, D6, we need to guess. So I'm going to guess a 6.
So you're going to guess a 6.
Yeah.
I'm going to guess a 1.
Okay.
It's a 3.
A 3.
So our winning numbers, or not so winning as the case may be with me, are 4, 20, 1, and 3.
And do you know what was so interesting about Iceland and Greenland?
What?
Is we're sitting there by the water and I heard a loon. And I thought, are we in Canada? I looked it up and sure enough, there's loons in Iceland. And then we're in Greenland and I hear another loon and I saw it as well. And our guide said, yes, there are loons in Greenland. So there you go. And so until next time, this is
Kate and
Allie,
the loons
from Canada.